Hey guys, it's Kay from KS Anonymous, and today I have something a little bit different for you. We're actually not coming from a subreddit, but actually a post I saw on Facebook and the comments section, so I thought it might be fun to share it with you. Basically, a Facebook page called Rate My Job shared a article where they share stories about brutally honest things interviewees said that cost them their job. We're not going to be reading that article. We're actually going to be reading the public comments on the shared article to hear some people's stories that they shared, and I thought it would be fun and interesting. I was in law school after having worked as a secretary and paralegal to put myself through undergrad. At my first lawyer interview, the interviewer said, 1, they were glad to see me because I was the last interview of the day and drinks were next. And 2, they'd want to hire me because I could do their typing when we were out of town in trial. Strike 2. I said something to the effect of, I hope you enjoy your drinks, and stood up, holding out my hand to her. She had a shocked look on her face, as did the boss who was sitting second chair to interview. I gave them my best smile, shook hands, and walked out. Fast forward 25 years, and it's a small world after all. My beloved niece married her nephew. True dat. That is a very strange turn of events. Like, obviously that interview went south very quickly, and then apparently their niece married the interviewer's nephew. That is so weird. I once interviewed with a very naive, newly elected member of the state house. She told me all about all the bills she was going to get written and all the great changes she was going to pass. I basically had to laugh and then inform her that, as a freshman member of the minority party, she would be lucky to get 2 bills out of LSB in her 2 years, and that she would be lucky to figure out where the bathrooms are in the Capitol before the next election. Needless to say, I was not hired. Thankfully. I mean, I know this isn't r/ITA, but if we were asking the question, you kind of were one. Just saying. But I get it. If you're in politics, you probably don't want to be working for someone who is naive. But it was still kind of rude and a little bit pretentious on your part, in my opinion. But moving on. I was interviewing a candidate for a network engineering position. His resume seemed quite inflated from the beginning, where he listed expert on a number of technologies. I started with the first technology he listed as expert in and asked him pretty basic questions. He couldn't answer any of them. Went to the second technology and still couldn't answer the most basic question. I then asked him if he was an expert in any of them. No, he answered. He said he listed himself as an expert in so many things because it would probably get him an interview. That's about when his interview ended. I have no clue how he made it through the screening process. Life lesson, guys, don't lie on your resume. Had an interviewer say to my GM, yeah, just trying to turn my life around. I used to be a drug addict, but the past 48 hours have been clean and sober. Dude, probably leave some details out next time. Yeah, that would probably be a good idea. Don't tell your interviewer that you've only been clean and sober for 2 days. Don't tell them that. The interview that didn't happen. I recently moved to my town and was looking for work. I applied at a retail store as an assistant manager, got a call for an interview. I had a day job putting up drywall and canceled it for the interview. When I arrived, the secretary told me that position had already been filled and I was only being interviewed as state law required them to interview veterans. I walked out without wasting my time doing the interview. Wow, that is so frustrating. How could you waste someone's time like that? And then have them, get their hopes up that they might get this job just because they have to interview them? I didn't even know that was a state law anywhere. A while back, I applied at the local branch of a chain store. The online test they gave was 100 questions, but it was the same 4 questions asked 25 different ways. I failed the test, and even though they weren't supposed to tell me, I knew the manager, and he explained that I only got 77 when their minimum was 80. When I explained that I realized the pattern and got tired of trying to figure out what they wanted to hear, he said, "You're the first person to catch that, so maybe you're too smart to work here." They went out of business a few years later. That's really concerning. I guess I would want to turn the other way if a manager told me that I might be too smart to work somewhere if I realized the very obvious pattern of the interview questions. That's... oh boy. I mean, I guess it's no surprise they went out of business a few years later, I guess. I had a phone interview after moving to a new area across the country. They asked what I was looking for salary-wise. I told them my previous salary in San Francisco, and they basically just laughed at me, and that was that. LOL. I get it that, like, you know, salary does change because different locations. When you live in San Francisco, you're gonna need a much higher salary because the cost of living is a lot higher there. So maybe he moved to somewhere that the cost of living is much lower, so people get paid a lot less there. But to just like laugh at someone and end the phone interview, that's kind of awful. When asked why I wanted to work at their company, I said, I figured it was the easiest place to get a job. She was visibly not impressed by my answer, and I was not hired. It was Walmart. I tried to get a job at Walmart once during undergrad. I didn't pass the multiple choice test, which is funny because I passed the bar exam. I do think that there are some places that want you to be a certain type of person who won't ask questions, who will just do whatever without really thinking about it. Because one time I actually just decided that since I kept failing all of my personality test questions for jobs, that for one of them I would just answer basically opposite of what I was, and it was just like, I don't want any change in my life, I'm compliant, I'm totally fine with basically being bored out of my mind 24/7 and doing whatever I'm told, and I won't, you know, blah blah blah. And then I proceeded to the next part of the interview process. So certain positions, they really are looking for people who don't maybe have a lot of ambition. Not to say that I'm even one person that has a lot of ambition, honestly. And other places I think really look for jerks. I worked at a place where I, again, failed the personality test and managed to get an interview just by pestering the hiring manager over the phone until I was granted an interview despite the fact that I failed the questionnaire. And they told me I failed the questionnaire, but actually ended up hiring me. And literally most of the staff were very arrogant, jerk type people. And they passed the test with flying colors. So I really do think that companies are looking for a specific type of person for specific types of positions, even if that means that that's going to cause them failure. Because, for example, that particular job I worked at, we had so much turnover and so many issues because of everyone's high egos. So it didn't really serve them well, in my opinion. But I guess corporate had decided that that was the kind of personality they wanted to work that position. I blew an interview once by telling the HR lady I had always been an individual contributor, not realizing at the time that that was an HR term for not management. I had already been interviewed by the CEO, a couple of VPs, and the technical staff, so it felt like I was a shoo-in, and the interview with the HR lady was a formality. She hammered away, trying 5 or 6 ways to get me to commit to saying that, and once I had, she thanked me and ended the interview. I was literally thinking, what just happened? Someone then explained to me I had told her I didn't want a management job since I told her I considered myself an individual contributor. Whoops. Business rules are so dumb to me. This guy who has passed several interviews and people think, you know, this is a great guy just because he says individual contributor as like a buzzword, he doesn't get the job. Oh my gosh. One time when I was asked, why should we hire you? I sweetly responded, because you don't want me working for the competition. Got the job. That's the kind of confidence I need in my life. During an interview, I had an attorney ask if I plan to have more children because, you know, maternity leave and all that. Looked him dead in the eye and told him there are laws in place that forbade him to ask such questions. His response, really? I can't ask you that? Oh yeah, he offered me the job because it seems like you know the laws and all that. I didn't accept. Good on you for not accepting if they didn't even know that they're not allowed to ask that question, and even to ask that question in the first place. Definitely not a place you would want to be working. My son got a group text on his job's number yesterday. I'm having so much fun at Six Flags, I don't think I'm gonna make it to work today, lol. Good job, guys. Good job. Tell your entire work that you're blowing off your job and have fun trying to call in sick. Had an interview at an auto repair shop where the interviewer clearly had never set foot on the shop floor. The guy spent 30 minutes grilling me on my knowledge, during which time a guy was trying to get a truck to start with no luck. After the interview, he walks me out past the guy working on the truck when I tap him on the shoulder and say, "Switch the 1 and 3 cables on the firing order." The manager rolls his eyes at me and we continue walking. 5 steps later, the truck roars to life behind us. The manager stares at me and asks, "How did you know that?" My response was, "How does a manager not know that? You dodged a bullet. If your manager doesn't know how to help you, what's the point?" I had a job shadow at a very famous frozen food deliverer. The guy asked if I had a family. I said yes, and he replied, "I'm going to recommend my manager we not hire you." Wow, discrimination much? I get it, like maybe being a food deliverer just isn't good for someone who has a family, but there are people who drive trucks and stuff like that and they have a family at home, and denying them work purely because they have a family, I don't think that's fair. I was in an interview once and was asked what I felt my biggest weakness is. I replied, "I'm too honest." The interviewer arrogantly scoffed, "I don't think honesty is a weakness." To which I replied, "I don't give a crap what you think." Now this one does kind of sound like one of those stories that goes around, like one of those jokes, so I'm not sure that actually happened to them, but still funny nonetheless. I find it interesting that so many of these interviewed candidates approach the situation like they are smarter and know more about their field than the person interviewing them. Granted, that is occasionally true, like the one with 7 years of InDesign experience, but for the most part, if you take an aggressive "I'm better than you" approach in an interview, it's not going to pan out well. I've interviewed dozens and dozens of people in the past 2 years for several different positions. Yes, sometimes I do get bored asking the same questions, but so often I don't actually care about the answer itself, I care about how that answer is delivered. I care about how you think through it. I care about the kind of language you use in your response and how relaxed or professional you come across while you're talking me through a past situation. That will tell me far more than the answer itself. And I think that's really fair advice for people, because a lot of people try to play the system and give all the right answers and everything, and I hope that more people are like this person, who interview people and know that no, nobody really has that perfect answer, and if they do, they probably aren't that genuine. And, you know, coming into an interview with humility should be rewarded in my opinion, but yet it is usually the people who come in and say, basically, "I'm better than you, give me this job or else," that seem to get the job. I don't understand that. People call it confidence, but sometimes it comes more across to me as arrogance. I once said when asked why I left my last job, "It might be nice and warm in hell, but you're still in hell." Again, not sure that was actually what they said, but if it is, oh my goodness. Yeah, that's not ideal. Apparently, actually complaining about your past job is never a good idea in an interview, from what I've heard, so don't do that. I studied marketing, and literally every job I've applied for turned out to be sales. I even did a job shadowing once after 2 interviews, and only at that point did they inform me that the actual job was selling coupon books door to door. Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting, because I thought about going into marketing when I was younger, but that's kind of what I ran into, was a lot of marketing, they seem to be trying to tie it to sales, and I'm just not a salesperson. I don't want to pitch something to somebody. I'm just not interested in that kind of thing. But I like the design aspects and the interest behind stuff like marketing. But yeah, I did see that most of the jobs were kind of tied to sales, and they just said it was marketing because for some reason people think that marketing equals sales, and it doesn't. I was interviewing for an internal promotion from an entry-level / minimum wage position in which I was on call, no set schedule, to a slightly better position making more money, but still on call. The question went something like, "This position does not guarantee a schedule. Do you want to work on call, including weekends and holidays, often with little as 2 hours notice?" I answered very honestly that I didn't want to. Nobody would ever want to, and would likely try to get a schedule as soon as I could, but until then I was willing to do whatever it took to advance my career. I didn't get it. I think the question was horribly worded because the only people who would ever give them the right answers were liars. And again, I think he's right on the money on that. At least he was honest. He was like, no one would want to do that. No one would want to be told with as little as 2 hours in advance that they need to go and, ruin whatever plans they might have had with family and friends and go and work. No one wants that, but he was willing to do it, and he's done it before. And he would be seeking hourly when he could. Like, what's wrong with being honest? So frustrating to me. I don't get it. But I think that's the frustrating thing about jobs. Like, who writes these questions? Yes, I would absolutely love to be torn from whatever I was doing with as little as 2-hour notice. That sounds fantastic. Very few people in the world could honestly say that, in my opinion. But maybe I'm wrong. Can someone tell me if I'm wrong about that? What do you think you bring to the table? I occupy space. I work better drunk. I gave an abrasive personality. I bring misery. I can surf YouTube all day. Pretty good at breaking stuff. Again, pretty sure that didn't happen, but still funny. You should have told me that shaving and cutting my hair was going to be a requirement. We could have avoided wasting the last 3 hours of testing in an interview. I mean, hey, some people take their beards and their hair very seriously. Apparently, this guy's one of those. Sometimes it isn't about the person, but the equipment you own. I was interviewing for an automotive recovery company, and things weren't going well, and the owner was about to dismiss me. In passing, I mentioned that I had a VATS interrogator, and suddenly he perked up and hired me. He asked what kind of car I had. I said I don't have one, so he said go to the lot and pick out whatever I want, and it would be mine. Wow, that's interesting. I don't know many people who would do that, so that's interesting. I applied at Walmart, and in the interview, they asked me why I wanted to work there, and I said, I don't. I feel like I feel like he should have been hired, because I feel like Walmart, most of the people that I ever come across at Walmart don't look like they have the will to live much longer. It's probably because the job sucks and people suck, and then the customers kind of suck too, so I wouldn't blame them for not wanting to work there. But it seems like the ideal candidate. I think it fits in the company culture pretty well. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, of course. I lost a job because she asked why I wanted to change jobs. Without skipping a beat, I said, I'm tired of being a slave to my computer. Was going from a call center to medical office not my finest hour. So basically going from one job at the computer to another job. Oops. I quote myself, I act like I care. I'm on the spectrum, so I really do have to act like I care, because I really don't. I understand some of these answers, why, like, the honesty I don't think was bad. But sometimes people, even, sometimes people don't always take what we say with a grain of salt. So maybe they were worried, maybe, if they didn't know you were on the spectrum, maybe they were worried that you were like some psychopath or something, or what is it called? The people who like have to mirror other people and they don't like have their own emotions or something? I don't know. I was interviewing for a position as a contractor with Special Forces. This was my second interview with them in a month. I felt I had crushed the interview and was going to get the job for sure. When my recruiter called me, he told me that the Special Forces guys loved me and wanted to hire me, but felt that I didn't have enough experience with them to hire me. When I asked how I would get experience with them, they responded by stating that I would need to work with them to get experience. How does someone get experience without getting hired? I guess 11 years of military experience is not enough. Whatever, I got a job that pays more working as a contractor with a different agency. Their loss. How are you gonna be like, oh yeah, we love you, you have great experience in the field and everything, but I just feel like you haven't worked with us enough. Bruh, he's interviewing for the job to work with you. This is so confusing to me. Whatever. No, I don't understand people's logic. Many years ago, I applied for an in-house transfer to prototype engineering. The interviewer asked if I had experience in 27 different aspects of the job. We went down the list and I had several years of experience in 26 items. But he said he really needed that 27th thing. I said, I can do 26 out of 27. What makes you think I can't learn to do that one? After a little bit more, he asked what job grade classification I had. I told him I was a specialist. He says, oh, this is an entry-level job. Then he asked what I would do if I didn't get the job, and I said, quit the company. A few days later, I was informed I was being passed over. Next day, I walked into my boss's office and told him he had 3 months. Bonuses were going to be paid out, and I gave him to the day after. He never put it together until he handed me the check. It was beautiful. Waiting until the day after that the bonuses would be handed out to quit, that's good. Anyway, that is actually going to end today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it, even though it is not under a normal subreddit. Sometimes I run across these sorts of things, and I thought it might be nice to share with you guys just because it's interesting and kind of funny. And that's why I think really reading all these subreddits is interesting and funny to us, but that's just me. So let me know if you liked this, if you ever want me to do this kind of thing again in the future. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop a like and let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Of course, if you ever have a story or something you would like to submit for me to narrate for one of my videos, go ahead and send it to ksanonymous@gmail.com. And I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!